One of the PTA goals, and you can find this on the National PTA, is our mission is to make children's potential a reality. And I'm reading just verbatim from the website, by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. So I really believe that partnering with Active Minds is really supporting that PTA goal that we do have in our value of collaborating with other partners to enhance our ability to serve and advocate for all of the children and the families in our community. So the Minnesota PTA has partnered with Active Minds, and I believe Active Minds has also partnered with the Healthy Minds at the national level. So we're all coming at this as a team to support all of our Minnesota PTAs, and Active Minds has made this super easy for PTAs at the state level and at the local level to really dig in and advocate for our students and advocate for our schools. So we are so excited to have you guys here. And I will pass it on to Ashley Hill, if that's okay.
Sounds great. And I'll give us some time for introduction, and then I'll go into our little PowerPoint here so we can talk through and you can have a visual, so it won't just be our lovely faces. I'm Ashley Hill, K through 12 manager for partnerships for Active Minds, and really excited to be here. I've been in youth development for 20 years, so this is my jam, both in school, after school, and during school time, youth development professional. So these are my spaces, watching young people light up and build their social emotional intelligence and learn emotional language and develop their own mental health literacy, so they can care for themselves and for their friends. So excited to be here to share this partnership. Passing it over to Haven. Oh, my pronouns, excuse me, are she, her.
Hey y'all, good to be here. My name is DeHaven. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the manager of K through 8 engagement. I'm pretty new to Active Minds. I've been here for 4 months. Time does not exist in my head. And before that, I've always worked with nonprofits, and through that nonprofit umbrella, I've pretty much exclusively worked with middle and high schools serving exclusively LGBTQ youth. So I'm really excited to carry that work into Active Minds, but also broaden it so that we can catch all of those super vibrant, awkward, amazing, cool kiddos that you just mentioned. So really excited to be here, and it's been awesome to just see the incredible work that y'all have done both nationally at the PTA level and locally in Minnesota. Just amazing to be able to meet so many vibrant, passionate adults who are just walking with us on this mission. So yeah, Nicole, you want to rock it out?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Jessel. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Minnesota State Fellow. I'm new to this role in the fall, but it's been a really great experience being here. Previous, I worked at the Minneapolis School District as a special education assistant, and done work with kids pretty much since I was a kid too. So I really have passion for helping kids succeed and give them the tools and really just be an advocate for them. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to be here today. And Ashley, I think it's back to you.
Thanks, Nicole. Awesome. So we're just going to take some time to get to why we're here, which is to share with you 2 awesome opportunities that Active Minds is building with middle schoolers in mind. We're very excited, but wanted to kind of get to know each other a little bit because we are youth development professionals, so we're super corny. Let me share my screen if I can. If not, I have a PDF in the wings. After several snafus, you just learn to, make backup plans. So thank you everyone for being patient with the backup plan. In the meantime, in between time, I did have an icebreaker for us, so I'll just go ahead and do that before I introduce who Active Minds is and we move on to the middle school conversation. I wanted us to get into the mindset of middle school. So reaching way back, not so far back because we aren't that old, are we? But reaching a little bit back into the crates of our minds, thinking about when we were either in middle school or high school. And I'm going to ask a few questions. This is put a finger down. You do not have to show yourself on camera. Keep being the lovely pictures or names that you are, and you can just kind of do it yourself. So you start with 10 fingers up, and as you hear one of these prompts, you will remove that finger, put it down, and see how many you have left based on these middle school / high school memories. So starting with 10 up, here we go. Put a finger down if you are still friends with some of your folks from middle school or high school. Put a finger down if you still listen to some of the same music you did in middle school or high school. Nirvana for me. Put a finger down if you had a regrettable haircut or hairstyle in middle school or high school. Put a finger down if you regret a prom outfit. A prom outfit, regret. I had a big brown dress. What was I thinking? Put a finger down if you were a band kid, you were in band. Put a finger down if you were in the cheer squad or a cheerleader. Put a finger down.
I kind of feel like everybody should have their cameras on for this.
Well, if they want to, they can, but if not, you can enter your number in the chat. Of
Oh, got it.
Yeah. We're cozy here. We're easy with whatever people want to do. Put a finger down if art was life for you. You created art, like art was your thing, whether it was music, whatever it was. Put a finger down in middle school or high school if you were considered part of the cool kids. Not me. You see, I haven't moved a finger. Put a finger down if you were considered kind of the artsy or the nerd squad, or like, you know, you had your own special table with all the cool kids that you considered cool. All right. And finally, put a finger down if your parents got you, like they understood you, they got the vibe, they understood who you were, and they were like, okay, yeah, I get it. All right, so how many fingers? I have 6 left. So in the chat, interested to know how many fingers you all have left. I see a 5, a 7, a 5. 5 as well. Lots of 5s. 6s, go 5s. I love it. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing that. Yeah, we just like to level set, just remembering what it was like to be in that stage of middle school and high school where your decisions were not your own. An adult was making most of those decisions, and you were kind of coming to your own personality, likes, dislikes, quirks, and really just figuring out what it meant to build your own identity. All right. Any luck on the show side over there?
I just need access.
Access. All right, so let's see. All right, going into my email. Share. Oh, yes, because Amy. Okay, gotcha. I think I'd only given access for Nicole. All right, see if that works for you. Rock and roll. Look at us. Awesome.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
It absolutely does. Thank you all for the time. we'll wait for it to load, and then we'll be on our way. I think right now we're just looking at the email screen. Awesome. We can potentially open to full screen. If not, we won't rock the boat. I think maybe the open with button in the middle. Woohoo. I think we're good. We won't rock the boat. Let's see, we can scroll down, I think we did put a finger down. Lovely, awesome, perfect, right there. Thank you so much. Thank you all. So again, us three, we are from Active Minds. It is an organization that has been in existence for about 20 years. And the organization came about when our CEO, Allison Mulman, then was in college, and she lost her brother to suicide. He was at Columbia, and at the time she was at UPenn. He had been struggling with his mental health, and the school didn't know, it hadn't been shared, and there hadn't been any supports. And so Allison found out that he had been struggling at school and there were no supports. And then when she returned to her school, there were no supports for her grief. There was no place to put that loss and place to have that conversation. So she made it her life's work to make sure that schools, particularly at that time, college and university campuses, had spaces where young people can have these conversations, be resources to each other, and just normalize the conversation about mental health. Her brother was struggling with a lot of stigma and shame and just questions, and there was no place, to have those conversations, especially when you think about, 19 years ago, these conversations weren't being had, and we're still struggling in many spaces to have them now. So that is the origin story of Active Minds, starting off as chapter networks on college campuses, starting off at University of Pennsylvania, and now at about 650 colleges and universities across the US and Canada. So just like you would start, a Greek organization or your yoga club on a college campus, you would start an Active Minds chapter, and it's peer-to-peer led. So that has been the bread and butter of Active Minds Foundation, is that young people are leading the conversation about mental health, because statistics say young people like to hear about mental health information, and most information they like to hear from each other, right? So why not empower young people to be able to facilitate those conversations? And so if you scroll down, or to the next slide, thank you so much. Active Minds, in its 19 years, in addition to those chapter networks on those college campuses, there are several other community engagements that Active Minds is leading. So, of course, we would want to focus on spaces in high school, and we started doing that about 3 years ago, because professors were reaching out and saying, yeah, it's great, the work that you're doing in college and university spaces, but you need to start sooner. And we know that that's true, right? We know that our young people, as soon as they can understand, right, can be having conversations about mental health, about their thoughts, about their feelings. So yes, absolutely, taking the cue from parents and those professors, starting conversations with high school. So again, that peer-to-peer network and curriculum was created at high schools. And once again, done as clubs, right? So the idea is that young people are leading the conversation. Adults are a guide on the side. So there is 16 conversations focused and aligned for the foundations of learning for high schoolers, right? Social emotional underpinnings, but also building the mental health literacy of young people, and also their ability to lean in and support each other when they're having more than a bad day. So if they're thinking about self-harm, if they're thinking about suicidal ideation, if they're anxious or experiencing depression, what does it look like to be able to lean into a friend and be able to support them and be of resource? In addition to our high school work, there's also work at work, right? So the idea is that, Active Minds wants to be part of the continuum of mental health conversation, not just in schools, but also you're going to eventually go into the world of work. So what does it look like for Active Minds to be able to host these conversations about what a mentally healthy workplace looks like? So we host those conversations as well. We do them live, we do them virtually. And there's also other like one-off opportunities that Active Minds provides as well. So some of you might have heard about our traveling backpack project. It's a project that goes to colleges and universities. It is a field of backpacks with young people telling their stories about suicidal ideation and self-harm, and just sharing their stories so that they can be of value to other young people. And it's very, very powerful narratives. You can look online and see those, and it's really a phenomenal visual to see how our young people are sharing their stories. But there are also stories from families whose young people died by suicide, and it is narratives from the families just sharing a little bit of what they learned, signs that they missed, places they wish that they had leaned in, and also that community had leaned in. So just really rich conversation that is then supported by Active Minds. So there's aftercare as well. So lots of community engagements at colleges and high schools. And of course, again, the conversation, once you talk about high school, it turns to, well, we need to start sooner. And what we know for sure is that that is the space where that support is very much needed. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to my partner, DeHaven. Thank you.
Yeah. So we are calling our magical middle school program We Are. So it's We Are Active Minds Middle. And out of the gate, right? Important to say, this is a free program. Every piece of the programming that is middle school is free for schools, for y'all, because we never want cost to be a barrier, right? So that just feels very important. We just want to like blast that all over. So with every piece of the program, we are centering best practice, making sure it is developmentally appropriate, that it is informed by some of the highest standards like CASEL, SHAPE, National School Counseling Association, all of these crucial voices. We're centering their expertise and always pulling in folks to make sure that we are creating a curriculum that is youth led, but also is mindful of the topics that we are bringing up, right? Whenever we talk about mental health with youth, we want to do it in the most ethical and responsible way possible. So we're keeping all of those things in mind. So with the We Are Middle School program, it's made up of three main pieces, and we have the curriculum, We Are Active Minds Club chapters, or just clubs, and then we have the Youth Champions piece, which Ashley will go into in a little bit. So we can just keep on. That's perfect right there. Thank you. So like Ashley did with the icebreaker, we always want to think of middle schoolers as they are, right? Like the older I get, the harder it feels for me to remember what was it like to be 12, 13, 14 years old. Like, what was that experience? And I always try to find my inner child, but it seems to be getting harder as I'm expected to meal plan and all of these different things. But with middle schoolers, right, they're all about connection to one another, connection to adults, but how do I authentically relate to myself and those around me? And that's a really, I think, taxing task, regardless of your age, but particularly at this one, when at the middle school age, they're kind of stepping away from their family of origin and trying to find their voice in this chaotic world. So how do I relate to my peers who are my number one, but then how do I start realizing what are the pieces that make me, right? Like, what are my identities? What are my values? What do I care about in this world? And how do I navigate it when I have so many different voices telling me who to be and how to exist? So just love middle schoolers. Wonderful age, right? So all about authenticity, kind of this combination of being young and old. If you hang out with any middle schoolers, sometimes I feel like I'm hanging out with a 2-year-old, and then we blink and suddenly they're like 60 with all of the wisdom in the world. And it's like, how can you be like old and young? Like, what is happening? Who am I? It's just really chaotic and intense and vulnerable, playful, honest, just all of these pieces. So with the curriculum, the club models, every piece, we're trying to hold all of these, the many facets that make up this middle school age, and just letting them lead the conversation. Because when youth are leading the conversation, I think that's when real change can happen in schools, for them to get the support, the change, the knowledge and skills that they need. So with all of this work, we are partnering with United Health and the magical folks at PTA. Thank you very much. So obviously we are piloting in Minnesota, where we can all cuddle by a fire and say our O's, right? And then we can all jump down to Florida for warmth and then meet in the middle in North Carolina. So these are the 3 states that we're piloting in. And again, we're really centering developmental best practices, but also on equity, right? Because what we know from the research, from the stories, the lived experiences of youth, is that some youth experience higher rates of obstacles, higher rates of barriers to get basic resources, and then just have a harder day-to-day life because of the identities that they hold, the environments that they live in, all of these different pieces. So we want to make sure that we're catching the most vulnerable youth and trying to bring them into the very center of our programming. And we're doing all of that with the data. We have an amazing research team at Active Minds, so we're always like poking at them, being like, provide us the data, give it to us, and we're using all that information to build everything out. So with the steps for this We Are program, really, right, like, we're developing a outreach plan. Nicole is leading that way in Minnesota, and so we're trying to gauge the interest, right? Once folks recognize, like, hey, like, I would love to do this in my school, we have capacity, we have youth engagement, basically the school will then reach out to us. So I'll go into the club model, but once folks reach out, then it's kind of deciding which club model is the best fit. I'll go to that in a minute. After that, after the club is created, then we will plug in the adult facilitator to things like, we're going to have an open house, we're going to have a virtual training of the trainers, all of these different things to provide education support. And then once the open house, the training of the trainers is completed, we're creating a virtual platform for youth, for adults to continue the conversation and find community. Because I think with school staff, this is a very intense and can be a very isolating time. So we want to offer ongoing support, connection, offer brainstorming support, anything that adults need. We want to offer that space in kind of a virtual Slack-like platform. We'll also send out different like check-ins, resources, and just kind of keep the conversation alive. But hopefully through that, folks can find community and support. And then with all of that, right, implementation will be happening at the same time. So creating that club, working out all of the little details to make the club come alive. Once your club is created, we have the youth, we have the adult facilitators, then we will rock out this curriculum. And while we're doing the curriculum, we'll also be engaging in those classic club activities like campaigns, education, bake sales, all of that great stuff. So with the curriculum, right, Ashley mentioned this real quickly, it's co-facilitated between youth and adults. And in each lesson, we're going to have it clear, like, hey, this is where the adult facilitator will really shine. This is a space for the student leader to step up and step in and try to practice those facilitation skills. But it is going to be a total of 16 lessons, 50 minutes each, and it's divided into 2 large sections of self and community. And we're really centering these kind of key developmental questions of who am I and how do I relate to others. So with the curriculum, again, we're centering those best practices of it's scaffolded, right? So everything is building on one another. what we talk about in the self lessons are going to be carried into the community lessons, right? So if I identify my emotions, cool, now I can identify my emotions and help my friend identify theirs. We can connect, we can offer resources, and we can work together to change our school community, right? So everything is building on one another, lots of repetition. We're taking abstract concepts, trying to simplify them, and we're just going to like practice makes perfect, right? Like I'm going to use my I statements, all of that good stuff. So lots of repetition. And then I'm a big advocate of play, right? I think middle schoolers are asked to be mini adults a lot of the times. I think students, youth in general are. So we're centering a lot of activities. Our other fellow is working really hard to create a kind of a Candyland game in one of the lessons, and I am incredibly excited about watching this unfold, but lots of activities and spaces for youth to play and practice and build confidence, connection, all of those different things. So that's the curriculum. And then the way it works, right, like I said, is I identify my youth, I create a club, and with the club, they're kind of two different makeups. So the school will pick one. The club makeup can be a mix of diverse students, right? So all races, all groups, artists, athletes, anybody and everybody, come on in, join our We Are Active Minds club, right? So once I have my club, then we work together to fill in that blank of we are what? Like, what are we about? We are awesome. We are student athletes. We are ninja warriors. I have no clue. I don't know why that's what came to my brain, but youth can work together to sort of set the tone of what are we about. Another option is that the school can create a We Are club that's based around a specific group or identity. So for example, I was just at a college campus last night and they were talking about student athletes and anxiety. So you could create a We Are athletes club, and it is made up just of athletes to discuss anxiety, things like that. So it could be based around, I see young Black girls struggling, LGBTQ, the sky's the limit, but it's allowing that space for community specific conversation. Regardless of the club model, we're rocking and rolling with that curriculum and doing all those different club-like activities. So now I'm going to hand it off to Nicole to talk about some of the specifics of Minnesota.
Thank you, DeHaven. So for Minnesota, on the screen, I've included some supportive data, but this data is really what has informed our work, and we've used it to build our curriculum and our programming. Some of the main topics that I have found specifically to Minnesota right now that our youth and the adults are looking for support around include bullying and harassment, suicide prevention, and self-harm. So also through my work, I discovered that Minnesota does have a minimal amount of school counselors, nurses, and BIPOC staff. And so with the different initiatives that Minnesota has been taking, we are really positioned pretty well for Active Minds middle school programming, with it being free and accessible, and trying to fill in some of those blanks that we are recognizing. So I wanted to highlight Governor Walt's package that he put out this week, with the main goal being making Minnesota #1 for kids in the country. So some highlights that he included on that were increasing access to mental health resources, which Active Minds specifically does, and then also having or championing a whole child approach. And so really that means taking a full look at the person in front of us and looking at all of the factors of well-being. And so can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, so Minnesota has a really high percentage of youth as well. So we have 24% of our population is youth, and that is more than the national average of 11%. And we also have a high percent of refugee students. So these are specific areas that Active Minds material can target, and it goes specifically with our grant too, to focus on BIPOC youth, Title I schools, LGBTQ plus students as well. So we have a large, diverse youth cohort and an opportunity to respond to adult needs. And so this for adults can look like systems of support, having more mental health professionals in our buildings to address this need of social emotional learning and awareness. And then also the youth needs of what does suicide prevention look like? What kind of conversations do we need to dig into to really start impacting these data points that we're seeing? And then also bullying prevention. So working on that environment and space that the youth are in. And then as well, our curriculum really focuses on the main topics here that I pointed out. And then students can actually learn how to advocate for change in their school too, through the We Are clubs and models. So we teach about policy and how to create that change. So for what's next in Minnesota for support, we will be at the PTA convention in April, hosting a vendor table, doing an exhibit and a workshop. And then we'll be connecting with different PTA leaders around the state, school leaders and district leaders to continue sharing our information for our fall 2023 kickoff. So if you're interested, let's connect, let's get you on the books. And we're really excited to get our stuff on the ground. So thank you.
So we're going to pause here before we go to the youth champion component and just to let you ask any questions based on DeHaven and Nicole's share regarding the curriculum and clubs.
I have a question. How would you like to receive those questions? Can they just unmute themselves and put it in chat, or what would you prefer?
Whatever folks feel comfy with. You can feel free to
Okay.
unmute, chat. We're very casual if you haven't gathered that.
I can always share again, but I just figured it'd be good to see people's faces.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Wonderful, wonderful. And if there are no questions right now, or if they're cooking.
For the good of the
Oh,
cause,
good.
the elder will speak. So from my understanding of your presentation, you're just in the collecting interest phase for middle schools in our areas, and then you would be doing some training to launch in the fall. Is that correct? Okay. And go ahead.
We are, no, that's a great question. We are identifying right now 15 districts across the 3 states. And, it could be one school per district. We would love all your middle schools in every district to do it, right? But for right now, for our fall kickoff, we're looking for 15 districts across our 3 states. Can 10 of them be in Minnesota and they knock it out of the park and make Florida look bad? Maybe. But yeah, absolutely. That's what we're doing. And so looking for, continuing conversation with districts and school counselors and principals who are specifically interested, having those conversations and then getting them signed up for the fall and getting them coach trained and supported to be able to facilitate those. DeHaven, tell me if I'm off.
Spot on, as usual.
So I'm going to throw down the challenge to my Rochester peeps. We should have at least one school, right, ladies and gentlemen who are from Rochester on the call. I will support you any way possible, even though I no longer have a middle schooler, thank goodness.
And that's what everybody says about the middle schoolers, but freakishly, our entire team loves middle schoolers. Usually they're like, everyone does the eye roll, like, no, elementary, or no, yes, high school.
I'm a
but
former middle
we-
school teacher too, so yeah, I'm all about it.
I love them too. Yeah. I had a club at Boys and Girls Club of 300 middle schoolers. Yeah. After school.
That's funny. I have a freshman this year, and so I know their transition out of middle school into high school now. They're like, whew, I made it. Thank goodness. I have a
It literally
question.
is a good story of like, if you can get to ninth grade from middle school, it's just miraculous. It's quite a metamorphosis.
It is. So I'm curious if one of our friends from Active Minds can go a little bit more in depth with what the peer-to-peer groups might look like, because you guys explained it to me and I just thought it sounded so incredible, and what kind of skills you guys set the peers up with particularly, so that they can support their peers in those groups. Would you guys be able to emphasize on that?
Yeah, so do you mean like the club groups to discuss the curriculum and other weird events?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so the idea, right, is that, and I think Ashley's whole development of the youth champions, it plays beautifully into this, right? We are really trying to find those incredible school staff personnel who are just like youth champions. I don't know another word for it, right? You don't have to be a youth champion to facilitate any of this. They're just kind of complementary programs, but really trying to find those people who are the teachers who have a secret handshake for every single student that walks into their room, right? Who is trying to eat their lunch in peace, looks up and they have 10 middle schoolers just hanging out, being like, hey, I don't want to go to the cafeteria. Can I just hang out with you, right? Because those folks exist and they have those natural relationships with youth. So we're trying to get this program into their hands to create these clubs and then really inspire that student leadership so that the youth can find their voice to facilitate a lesson on coping skills, right? Like, hey, I'm going to walk our group through the Candyland game, right? And we're going to talk about different pieces of coping skills, when it works, when they don't, which ones to use, all while having the support and the guidance of the adult facilitator. But what we want to center is that youth voice. So it's youth to youth, right? Because I don't know about y'all, but at 13, if my mom said something to me, I just looked at her blankly and waddled off, right? Like my brain broke. I stopped listening to adults and I was only listening to my friends. And I look back on pictures and I'm like, good Lord, why did someone not intervene? But people did, and I didn't listen, right? Because what youth are going to respond to is my friend or that person I think is really cool talking to me about this, right? And they have that style, that vocabulary, they can catch the vibe, the energy that I can't because I'm not 12 in 2023, right? So we really want to center that dynamic and just that vibe, that flavor of what youth can offer one another that adults really can't. But what adults can offer is, hey, let's stay on track. Let's make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, that we're completing the lessons, that kind of rational, calm brain, while also intervening as needed if things pop up. Is that helpful?
That's very helpful. Yes.
Cool. Good question. Thank you.
And then a follow-up question on top of that, not to put you on the spot again, but I really loved what you guys were doing as far as giving peers the tools to support their peers. And I hope that I'm summarizing this somewhat accurately, and maybe you can emphasize a little bit more, but your team is wanting to give the peers the tools such as validating their peers and then listening to them. And then if they see a red flag, giving them resources to give their peers. Can you emphasize on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so thank you for that. Yeah, so VAR, validate, affirm, respond, that's like one of our big like patented programs, right? We use that at every single level. So with VAR, we're taking that exact kind of concept and just weaving it throughout at almost every point of the curriculum, right? So that youth are developing those skills, that knowledge, that confidence to be able to do things like I'm going to actively listen to my friend. I'm going to affirm them. I'm going to advocate for them. I'm going to respond in a appropriate way. Maybe we need help. Maybe we tag an adult that we trust, like a youth champion, or we go to another friend, but we know how and when to support one another while also asking for help. So those exact tools are what is just interwoven throughout the entire curriculum. Thank you for saying that. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions today for our awesome friends at Active Minds?
And if not, I will quickly do youth champions and then have you guys sit in contemplation. All right, maybe can we cue the presentation? Thank you all so much for managing this. And we
You
can
have
go-
it there?
Yes, it's
Okay.
perfect, perfect. Wonderful. So I am really excited about Youth Champion Connections. It has been one of the best parts of my career to work with teachers and parents and all of those who engage with young people. And so, you know, a youth champion, along with how we will, go into a deep definition of it, a youth champion is anyone who is in the lives of young people. So it is the librarian, it is the math teacher, it is the auntie, it is your youth development professional at a Boys and Girls Club, it is a mom, it is a dad, right? Anyone who can leave an imprint on the life of a young person, whether it's a coaching season or, the middle school math class. So when we think of youth champions, like we want to, as to DeHaven's point, like have in your head kind of what that looks like. These conversations, these youth champion connections are built so that adults know how to create the safe spaces that are needed for our young people to feel safe, brave, and vulnerable enough to have those critical conversations. What does it look like for an adult to be able to host a space that is so safe that they give us information that is vitally needed, right? We've all been in spaces with young people where hopefully they have disclosed something and we felt prepared for it because we were the person that they trusted, right? That space is extremely important, especially in middle school. So support for those youth champions is important. So when we think about a youth champion, it's someone that practices unconditional positive regard. You don't have to earn an A with us, right? You don't have to have perfect grades, perfect hair, perfect home life. You start out with an A, you remain at an A with us, right? Unconditional positive regard. We're gonna like you no matter what, right? Celebrating youth culture. You don't diss TikTok. You understand the validation of it, even though you might be an Xer or a boomer, right? You understand that youth culture has value, right? It has a voice, it has a vibe, it has things to say and things to give. There are things that I learned from high schoolers in learning spaces and in TikTok that are just beyond. I'm like, wow, I cannot believe that they know these things about mental health, that they know these things about themselves, that they have such introspection. So you have respect for youth culture and you celebrate that. Guiding principles with positive discipline. You understand that there are no good kids or bad kids. The behavior was either helpful or unhelpful, right? That's it. And your job is to guide that behavior. If that is an unhelpful behavior, your job as an adult is to develop that behavior so that it can be a helpful behavior to them and to others, right? Instead of, castigating or punishing, right? Your idea is, I want to develop, right? And then for the fourth one, facilitating relationships and spaces and anti-racist practices. Because when we think about serving youth, right? That's all youth. And that's all of their beautiful identities that they bring to the table. So when we have a group of LGBTQ and or Black and Brown youth and or Jewish youth and or white skater youth, right? When we want to think about being able to host safe spaces for all of our young people, regardless of how they identify. And so a youth champion wants to lean into what it looks like to create safe space for all young people, no matter how they identify, no matter if our communities match, our skin match, our orientations match. What does it look like to serve all young people well? Next slide. Thank you so much. So, I mean, the reason that we're doing this is myriad, right? Curriculum for young people is a must. These conversations for young people is a must. But conversations for youth champions are also very much needed because the work is so important. And when we say a youth champion, you know, aside from those 4 things that we just talked about, those 4 foundations, these are folks that literally change statistics. And you do not, fortunately, have to know, validate, appreciate, refer. You do not have to know the exact script on how to walk a young person through suicidal ideation. You do not have to know every single sign of depression, because the data says that showing up, creating a safe space is enough. Validating young people for who they are is enough. That is what moves the data that you see here. So positive adult connections are a protective factor for youth. It doesn't say that we have to be perfect, know all the things, be a school counselor. And the beauty of that, to Nicole's point, is we don't have enough school counselors as is, right? We don't have enough nurses as is. So what that means is what we have is youth champions, and we can make more of them by building these spaces for them to practice, to think, to share about those practices that really end up saving and changing lives of young people. 1 or more caring adults in a child's life increases the likelihood they will flourish in adulthood. What teachers, what parents, what youth development professionals do is, it's just insurmountable in the importance. And so creating a space for them to be able to have these conversations for their own personal and professional development is really important. And I'll read one more. Consistent contact with caring adults reduces engagement in high risk behavior, but also a further point, you have connection with a consistent adult that is safe and healthy. It significantly lowers your mental health related concerns. Like, this is a big deal. And again, you do not have to have your license in social work. So I just really want to implant on you how important just the showing up and being able to hold safe space is for young people, not knowing every right word to say, but being a trusted and safe adult who is consistent in your care. So another reason why we're developing these youth champion connections, it's because it's a needed space for our youth champions. Just looking at a couple of the things that are impacting our parents and caregivers and our teachers. 1 in 5 teachers work a second job. Folks are exhausted. Highest rates of burnout are reported by our K-12 teachers. On the parent side, 1 in 4 parents is struggling to afford food or housing in 2022, right? So these youth champions who are tasked with this awesome job, who, if done consistently and supportively, really can change mental health statistics, can change health statistics. They're tasked with an awesome job, and yet the weight of their work is so heavy, right? The weight of their life circumstances is so heavy. So providing a space for them to be able to host these conversations and to talk about these things is really important to us. So what are youth champion connections? We'll move on to the next slide. Thank you so much. So what are youth champion connections? They're 8-hour-long conversations. They are in person and they are also virtual, professional and personal development for our youth champions. You can attend one, or you can attend all 8 in any order, and just secretly, we also have 5 that are also being developed. So it's a total of 13. But for this year, we're promising 8, but just knowing that there will be more conversations. So right now, 8 1-hour-long conversations for personal and professional development. Let's dig into it a little bit more. Our objectives, I won't belabor them here, and I'll send out all these materials as well. But some of the important ones: highlight strategies for youth engagement that spark feelings of emotional safety. We know that that's the name of the game. We know it's not necessarily you having to step into and be a school counselor. School counselors are invaluable, right? But we unfortunately all can't get licensed, right? But being able to hold safe space is often enough. So what does that look like? Discussing and demonstrating methods that encourage growth of youth social emotional development, and also increasing youth champions' mental health literacy. So it is important that we be able to host this safe space, but we do want to give you the language and the skill to be knowledgeable enough so you feel comfortable understanding what are the signs of depression, what are the signs of anxiety, and how do I lean in? And further, to connect that to the definition, of a youth champion, understanding like anti-racism and all of those foundations. What does depression look like in our LGBTQ youth, right? What does depression look like in Black youth? It looks different. So really being a youth champion is also understanding the nuances of the young people that you serve. And our next one. Our foundations are in a developmental relationship framework and an anti-racist framework. I won't belabor unpacking that, but just understanding that these are relationship-based exchanges, and that's our framework, and that also our framework is an anti-racism, because there's just no way to create a safe space for all youth without that kind of framework. And some of our outcomes are that, we hope that our youth champions leave these spaces feeling a higher level of confidence in engaging in conversations about suicide and suicidal ideation. Also increase comfort seeking mental health assistance for themselves and for their families and friends. And another, increasing ability to recognize signs of depression and anxiety in themselves and in others. So in addition to those, like drawing closer, being able to hold that space, also understanding your own mental health, how you're impacted by stress and things like that. So nurturing not only for the youth champion, but also for the child in those spaces. And next one. Some of our conversations at a glance. If we could scroll up to the next slide. Thank you so much. So some of our conversations at a glance, we are the champions. So I love this session because it's a conversation about, where we get our youth engagement practices from. Oftentimes we get them from our parents, and oftentimes we don't actually want to use the youth development strategies our parents use, but we fall into patterns, right? So what does it look like to unpack where we got our youth engagement strategies from, and pack out the things that we want to keep and put away those things and get new skills for the ones that we actually want to build. Creating space for the whole child, again, that's the job of a youth champion. No matter what identity, comes before me, how do I create that space to affirm that young person, make sure they make it to the next day, the next moment, and that they thrive and that they thrive in their lives. One of my favorites, an ear, a hand, a voice, deeply connected to our validate, appreciate, refer tool, but really focusing on active listening skills with middle schoolers. That is really a skill with middle schoolers, how to actively listen. And so the strategy is called an ear, a hand, a voice, and when to lend which one, and how to lean into that space. So I'm going to close that one out, and our just the last slide here, as I am at 2:01. Here's how to connect with me. I will make sure that Nicole and Amy get this presentation, can pass it on to you. And, me and the team would love to set up a conversation and have you potentially think about, kicking off with us in the fall with all this good stuff. You can absolutely do the curriculum and clubs separate of the Youth Champions content. The Youth Champions workshops are literally meant as a separate and a standalone. You do not have to attend these in order to facilitate the club and the curriculum, but we really value our youth champions so much. We wanted to give them a specific space for their own development, and also to share with us their own youth development strategies as well. I'll stop there. And I know we are 2 minutes over, which is a cardinal sin. But if anyone had a question, I'm receptive to it.
Well, while people are thinking of their questions, you can go ahead and unmute or put them in the chat as well, whatever you're comfortable with. I want to thank Ashley and Nicole and DeHaven for being here and just doing the good work, because it's no secret that mental health is definitely on the forefront right now and something that we need to be putting our hearts and our energy into. So I'm very thankful that your organization and Active Minds is here to support our schools and giving the PTAs an opportunity to really advocate for our students, as well as advocating for our adults and our communities. I mean, it feels like a win-win-win here. So if anybody has any questions before we log off, I'll leave some time for that. Otherwise, if we have no questions, you're very welcome to email any of us really, and we can get you connected to whoever we need to get you connected to. Otherwise, if you want to continue the conversation, we would love to see everybody in person at our convention that we're having. So we're having our convention on the weekend of April 14th and 15th, and Active Minds are going to be there. We're going to have reps from Active Minds there, so you can sit and actually have a conversation in person. So right now we're just planting the seeds, gathering all the people that are very excited to be a part of this. And then we are going to be launching this in the fall. Active Minds will be launching this. So I appreciate everybody that was here. Thank you, Minnesota PTA, for allowing our friends at Active Minds to be here.